get a result from the investment that we make as policymakers with taxpayer dollars so that we are able to advocate effectively on your behalf. As we go into another year and we see the potential of interest rates rising and debt increasing, it's going to be harder and harder to advocate against some of these competing interests. I think you'll see that the three of us will stand strong as a delegation to not only defend the appropriations that we have for health and medical technology, but also that we will stand strong to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to increase those appropriations. I look at what the Moffitt Cancer Center has done with their Pathway to Savings. I think it's a very innovative way to make sure that you utilize practice protocols to not only better the health and care of your patients, but also to do it with a better return from the investment that you receive. I also look at the cooperative actions that you take with the Department of Defense and realize how significant as an anchor you are in that relationship. And finally, I can only tell you that as we go forward with appropriations and everybody wanting a little piece of this or that from our budget, one of the best returns we've ever seen has been some of these competitive awards, like the X Games, or the X Prize, where we incentivize people with prizes at the end when we used industry, quite frankly, to send a rocket into space and point at the Earth from the X Prize. There are ways to become more innovative so that you all, because you do deserve, you can earn these grants, and we want to see that happen. I look forward to today's discussion and look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues on this.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to move to Congressman Jolly next.
Thank you, John. Dr. Liz, Dr. Ginchak, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'll just provide a very brief introduction because anybody locally knows I'm about 8 weeks into this job. So I do bring about 20 years of working, as was mentioned, with my predecessor, Mr. Young, working on behalf of Moffitt and working within the appropriations process. I'll also share with you that in private practice I have worked extensively with both research universities as well as small labs, with principal investigators in novel research, helping identify funding. And I believe it is a proper investment. We need to begin to talk about the return on that investment because we can look at the money that goes into research. You can look at some of the funding that has gone into specialty research over the past 10 years and realize on a cost curve how that reduces long-term healthcare costs. And we need to begin framing or continue to frame the conversation about investment in basic and applied research in terms of the cost savings that it creates for long-term care costs, because we know that's the case, and we can make an economic argument for that. Regionally, I think everybody in this delegation, and you have seen this, supports Moffitt and USF and the work that's here. It's one of the great regional assets that we have here in the area, and I think you'll see across both aisles and across the region, you'll continue to see strong support from this delegation. Congressman Ross mentions the competing interests, and that is absolutely true. We all know the fiscal environment in which we work. I would like to at least introduce in the conversation strictly in an academic way, not in a political way. But when we have conversations about balancing the budget and addressing long-term mandatory spending, I come from an appropriations background, so this is a little bit self-serving in terms of my career experience. But for those of you who may not be fully aware of the federal budget process, we have mandatory spending. Those are the programs you often hear about: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, interest on the debt, and so forth. Those are mandatory programs. If an individual qualifies by statute for that benefit, it has to be paid. It's not up to the discretion of Congress to change the amount to spend each year. It's important because of this. If you look back to 1960, the discretionary part of the budget, where Congress could determine spending on research, on defense, on education, on the environment, whatever it might be, that comprised about 65% of the federal budget. 50 years later, the discretionary part of the budget is only about 35% of the budget. So we're fighting uphill a battle that I'm afraid on the appropriations side will just continue to get increasingly worse if we don't address a long-term balanced budget needs. And again, I mean this strictly academically, not to get into the weeds of how we balance the budget. But I say that to introduce the conversation. I think we can achieve long-term increases in discretionary spending, long-term increases in research funding if we begin to address a long-term balanced budget needs as a whole. That's a long-term conversation. I'm not suggesting we can accomplish it today. But as somebody who discretionary spending in the decades to come. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to learn from each and every one.
Thank you very much. And Congresswoman Pastor.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, President Genschat. Thank you, Dr. List, everyone here at the Moffitt Cancer Center. It's an honor to be here with all of you who are working on saving lives and looking for the cures and treatments of tomorrow. And it's also an honor to be here with my colleagues, Congressman Ross and Congressman Jolly. And welcome, Dr. Lockwood, to the USF Tampa Bay family. It's great to have you here. I know you're going to hit the ground running. This is an exciting place, and I know that's probably what drew you here. This is an exciting place. Think of the Moffitt Cancer Center. It is the fastest growing NCI designated cancer center in the country. It was just founded 1986, opened in 1986, and now it is viewed as one of the leading cancer research centers in the entire country. No other NCI designated comprehensive cancer research institute is growing as quickly as Moffitt. Part of that is because of its relationship with the University of South Florida, the greatest research university when it comes to health sciences in the state of Florida. The hallmark of USF really is the collaboration, how everyone at USF Health works together. Look at the College of Medicine, nursing, physical therapy, what has happened at the Alzheimer's Center with Dr. Moore. Then you add in the Florida Mental Health Institute, located across the street from the busiest VA hospital in the country, the new partnership with Florida Hospital and Pepin Heart Center. This is a remarkable place that has grown very quickly, but we're going to have to work hard to sustain the progress. How many of you are aware that the largest NIH grant in the country is here at USF? Good. That is Dr. Jeff Krischer's diabetes research, where he is the focal point for diabetes research all across the country and across the globe. What is happening there with Dr. Krischer and Dr. Gonzalez is something that we can be very proud of. These are going to be replicated again and again here in the Tampa Bay region, along with our private partners in biomedical research. In fiscal year 13, in the state of Florida, we received over 1,000 NIH-funded grants, totaling about $450 million. Every dollar invested from NIH grant in the state of Florida generates $2.21 in state business activity. But the challenge now is how do we continue that? One of the most important commitments is to make a more robust and secure commitment to the research dollars in the coming decade. Now, Dr. List talked about this budget sequester. It had a very harmful impact on what we want to do in this community. Florida lost $67 million. We put researchers, we scared the living daylights out of them, really. And I met with one Moffitt researcher in my office just last week. His grant's coming to an end, and he's going to have to leave this year. He's the kind of bright young star that we need to keep here. And what Congressman Jolly has highlighted, Congressman Ross, what do we need to do moving forward to secure the NIH grant dollars? This year, in this fiscal year, NIH will receive about $30 billion, $5 billion of that for NCI. But in my opinion, we're just treading water at best, because another round of sequester cuts loom in fiscal year 2016, and this is a scary proposition for a community that has lifted itself up as one of the health innovation capitals in the United States. Last week, during a roundtable similar to this, called 21st Century Cures, a call to action, Dr. Francis Collins, the director of the NIH, said, we need a steady trajectory of support. Recent cuts, sequester, have been particularly harmful. Cures are potentially within reach, but 10 years of loss in purchasing power is beginning to break the NIH. He said it's cast a pall to fall over young investigators at a time when America has the greatest talent available and new technologies at our disposal. He specifically mentioned personalized medicine amendment in the Budget Committee to move the NIH research dollars and funding from that discretionary budget into mandatory, so that it is not subject to the whims of the Congress and the budget balance. That would take it out of any threat of sequester moving forward. Because after all, is medical research in this day and age discretionary? I don't think that it is. So after our roundtable with Dr. Collins last week and others at the FDA and NIH, I've decided I'm going to take that amendment and turn it into a bill. So I'm happy to announce this morning I'm going to file that legislation very soon. It might not go anywhere, but we need to make the point and continue to press the point that we cannot move backwards in the United States of America when it comes to our research numbers. So I'm going to need your help on that effort. With all of your associations, your other researchers all across the country, we need to continue a coordinated effort to say we're not going to move backwards on NIH and research funding from this point forward. I do want to mention two other quick things that are going on in the community. One is this summer we're going to launch an HPV awareness and action campaign. Did you all know that Florida has the lowest rate of vaccinations for the only known anti-cancer vaccine ever? We're lower than Mississippi. So with the help of Dr. Anna Giuliano, who's here at Moffitt, Dr. Ellen Daly at USF College of Public Health, we are going to launch an education and awareness campaign so that parents, doctors, medical professionals understand how important it is. Because not only are we lowest in HPV vaccination rates out of the entire country, we also have higher rates of cervical and oral cancer. So if you want to be involved in that effort, I need your help. Please see me afterward. And also, President Genchak, I wanted to compliment everyone at the USF College of Public Health, because USF was the winner of the largest Navigator grant in the state of Florida, one of the largest in the country, to help sign people up for affordable health insurance. We had anticipated that maybe 600,000 or 700,000 Floridians would sign up for health insurance. It was announced 2 weeks ago that, led by the USF College of Public Health and Jody Ray and the Child Center, we enrolled over 1 million Floridians in new health insurance. Add on the 250,000 new children who are covered because of their efforts under Children's Health Insurance and Medicaid. And then the private health insurers enrolled another couple hundred thousand as part of that. I'm very proud of what they did. You all were innovative and creative, and you're going to make a real difference in the lives of all Floridians. I look forward to this.
Well, thank you very much. You can tell that we are blessed with having the passion and dedication of our elected officials, and that is something that we should never take for granted. What I'd like to do now is try to give you a quick overview, a little higher level kind of conversation about what we've seen in the Tampa Bay region with regard to applied medicine and human performance. First of all, you probably remember, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where everybody was wringing their hands over where are our new jobs coming from. We certainly can't always rely on construction. We have tourism that is continuing to grow. We have agriculture, but where are the new industries? Where are the new industry clusters or segments we need to be paying attention to? So the Tampa Bay Partnership, along with the economic development organizations around the Tampa Bay region, pulled together and got a matching grant for $600,000 led out to SRI to study this region. Where are those emerging segments of industries that are likely to have the most significant impact on job growth and higher wages? And as a result of that, there came 4 industry segments that kind of stood out from everything else. The first one was applied medicine and human performance. The second one was high-tech electronics and instruments, or advanced manufacturing. The third one was business, financial, and data services. And the fourth one was marine and environmental services. Now, the one that popped out the absolute most, as you can see here in this diagram, over there where it says life sciences, that is where we believe to be the priority set for the future job growth in Tampa Bay. So you can see that where that sits on the horizontal axis with high growth potential. In fact, I'll give you a minute, in a minute I'll tell you what the actual jobs in this sector are, not just in research, but in the sector is rather significant. But you can see how that lines up against the other segments that are growing. And when they came up with this decision, there were 4 categories that each one of the sectors that they looked at had to pass. The first one is the characteristics of the segment itself. Was it tradable, and did it have an export orientation, meaning that it could leave Tampa Bay, Florida, the country, and perhaps globally? The second one, did it have a regional critical mass to it? Did it already have a hub, which meant that we could grow it and become number 1, number 2 in the country when it came to the sub-positions within these segments, which I'll mention in just a moment. The third one was growth and stability. How well, if this segment grew, would it be sustainable? Could it grow within this region? Could it grow in Florida? Could it grow in the country? And the fourth one was job quality. A big issue with job quality in terms of the skill requirements and with regard to the wages, the high wages. So you can see why that this particular sector was such an important sector for us to pay attention to. Now let's take a look at the heat map, which I call it. Part of the outcome of this research was to create an asset map. An asset map for what we see in terms of how do you connect, as we have seen today between Moffitt and USF, how do you connect the entire region with a significant number of concentration of research activities going on. Now, if you look at that chart closely, you'll see that USF takes up the majority of the connections up there. But the 2 anchors, obviously, are Moffitt and USF. But what's important to recognize overall in those numbers, or in that diagram, is there are 2.5, 3 years ago, there was about 220,000 employees in that particular sector, applied medicine and human performance. Today, there are 260,000. So we've had good growth, not only in terms of the number of employees in that sector, but also in terms of wages. Wages alone in the sector are over $3 billion. So if you think about it as almost like an industry, it is a significant factor for the future growth of Tampa Bay, which is why this is such a high priority. When you look at this as a percent of the total population or the total wages, it really is almost 20% of the total wage base in Tampa Bay and of the total employment side of Tampa Bay. So those are significant pieces of information to say, when you think about the future of Tampa Bay, our region, where are we heading with our region? Where should we invest? And what will be the return on that investment? This is where we start. These are the facts. These are the numbers. This is the data that we will use to connect the issues of the request for research and the return on investment that we need to be able to go up against others that we're competing against, not necessarily in this applied medicine and human performance segment, but just overall when it comes to the dollars that we